Hey there, I'm Dr. Barbara Woods, and welcome back to the Intergenerational Trauma Therapist Show, podcast, live stream. I hope you're having an amazing day. And today we're going to talk about something that's very near and dear to my heart, and that is helping therapists transform into connected and courageous master therapists. The word master may throw a few people off in that it may have a connotation of having power over people or being in an authority position. That's not what it is. In this case, when we talk about a master therapist, we're talking about a therapist who has a wide range of diverse skills, can connect very well, has the courage to go into those dark places, and is able to maintain that connection with the client. So they're mastering the art and the science of therapy rather than mastering over other people. When therapists are working with complicated families, they can become frustrated, they can become fearful. Sometimes they can even kind of go into a state of collapse because of the complications and how complex some of the families are. But it is possible to transform that fear into connection and courage. And that's where we're going to head today. So, connection and courage doesn't always have to look like the power of a roaring lion or a presence that takes charge. It can be a more gentle way of melding into and entering into a family system. With families who've had complex trauma, intergenerational trauma, they need that gentleness more than they need a roaring lion. So we need to have that deeper level of understanding and connectedness that communicates something that may be very unexpected, and that's safety. Safety in that relationship is the most important thing. I learned this in my first few years of graduate school. I was working as a healthcare attendant in a substance abuse facility, entry-level job, just getting some experience. I was there on evenings and weekends, and one of the therapists gave me an assignment where we were going to run a group that we took large index cards. This was back in the day where you could tape them on people's backs, and then everybody wrote a word or two that described that other person. Then we sat down and kind of went over the cards and processed the words that were on our card, if we feel like they fit for us and if we felt like they did not fit for us. Well, the residents asked me to join in and asked me to participate, so I did. Usually that's not a big deal, except for this time when we got our cards and we sat down to process all these different words that people had used to describe us. I saw the word on my card, harmless. I was kind of shocked because when I was there on the weekends, it was usually just myself and maybe one other staff member that ran a 60-bed unit, and we were dealing with people from jails, prisons. So it was a difficult position. I was very early in my career, and I felt like that word harmless was like they didn't respect me. So I kind of sat there and thought, do I have to read that word in this group? And then it's like, in integrity, yeah, you do, because the person who wrote that's going to be in the group. So I read the word out, and we processed all those. It still didn't sit well with me. So the next shift that I worked, the therapist that gave me that group activity to do asked me how it went. And I showed her my card, and I told her that I didn't like one of those words on my card and talked to her about it. And she was such an insightful, seasoned therapist. And she recognized the writing of the person that wrote it. And she said that the person that wrote that word is a person who's been so hurt by people that he expects them to always be kind of a roaring lion or to be aggressive. So that word harmless was actually a huge compliment. And after I learned more about polyvagal theory, I interpret that now as harmless as a person that offers safety in relationships. So now I'm okay with that word. It really has impacted the way that I have kind of taken on my role as a therapist and in my training. It's really important for me. When we're working with intergenerational trauma, if our presence is like the roar of a lion, it may only serve to increase the defensiveness or shutdown of our clients because they've had many roaring lions in their lives. They have schools that are upset with the child's behavior. They have neighbors that are upset with the child's behavior that's causing disruption in the community. Extended families are frustrated because they see the parenting and they're not happy with what's happening with the child. Programs and services can get frustrated with these families because of the chaos and the complexity if we don't deal with it in a very effective and efficient framework. There are so many roaring lions in these clients' lives that we have to not be one of those. If harmless isn't a weakness and roaring like a lion only creates more difficulties, what's the most successful solution to this problem? And that's what we're going to cover next. Most therapists understand the power of relationships and the importance of our therapy skills. We're taught that very early in our careers. But when we're stressed, we're still human and we can slip back into a mode of trying to be more of an authority, more of an expert, more powerful. And that is a trap that we can easily fall into. So we think we have to be charged or in control. That's where you'll start to hear the word, when parents are in that mode, you'll start to hear the word fixed. You need to fix my child, or therapists will feel like they have to fix. That's a key word that will kind of be a red flag for this kind of interaction. And it's just like I felt in that group exercise. I didn't want to be seen as harmless, which I thought was weak. So, the most successful path that a therapist can take when working with intergenerational trauma is the one that I call connected and courageous master therapist. We're going to take these pieces at a time. We're going to look at connection, we're going to look at courage, and we're going to look at the concept of a master therapist. Starting with connection, attachment impacts of intergenerational trauma have a huge, huge impact on the caregiver's experience, their connection with others, and their ability to parent, and their ability to engage in a therapy relationship. So they may not feel good enough, or they may feel less than others in relationships. They may feel like the whole world is working against them. They may have their whole lives felt invisible, unseen, unheard. And this is likely rolling over into their relationship with their child, where they're overwhelmed because of their own impacts and because of the impacts on the child and the triggering that the impacts of the child can make on the parent. So, several of these clients that come from complicated families, they may have never experienced a relationship where they're seen, heard, and understood by someone without judgment. If there's patterns of intergenerational trauma that started prior to the current parent generation, they may have never experienced co-regulation with another adult. So this is pretty significant what they haven't gotten. So they wouldn't even know how to recognize it, they wouldn't know how to receive it, and they certainly wouldn't know how to give it to others. This is where our ability to connect as therapists and truly connect in a safe, harmless way is critical to therapy. It's not just for clients impacted by intergenerational trauma. This is for all of our clients, because unconditional positive regard and safety in the therapeutic setting is really, that is the therapy in most cases. And it's really the foundation that is critical for successful therapy. Clients impacted by intergenerational trauma, it's really important that that connection is very intentional, but it's also in a tolerable and safe range. We have to be incredibly sensitive to the client's past hurts and provide opportunities for them to change and grow. We have to provide connection and co-regulation and be the foundation of turning those tides of the impact of intergenerational trauma to leave that legacy of healing and resilience. So that's connection. Connection is really about safety. It's about that relationship, and it's about having the client have a corrective experience. For us to be in a state of connection, we can't be fearful, we can't be frustrated, and we certainly can't be collapsed. Now we're going to move on to courage. So, when we're working with families that are very complex, impacted by intergenerational trauma, we have to have a high degree of courage to enter that family system because we have to navigate the impacts and we have to support change and transformation. These impacts can be generations deep. So, it can be a really difficult process and it can be really going into some dark places with people because it's been there for so long. It's not an easy process. It can be very intimidating, especially for new therapists or those who aren't used to working with tough populations. Now, if you've worked with really difficult populations, you develop a skill set that you can kind of transfer as long as it's not harsh and kind of demanding like you develop in a correctional setting, but you develop skills that you can challenge people in a way that doesn't create defensiveness. You can support them, but it's not an easy process. So the courage we need may be more related to sitting with someone who's had experiences of huge and immense pain and not avoiding it ourselves. So not trying to get it to be better, not trying to focus on the positive, when they're sitting in an immense amount of pain. It's about validating and supporting them through that process. We also need courage to challenge the generational patterns that find their way into the experience in life in the current generations. Some family members may have what's called an invisible loyalty to previous generations where they are just, this is the way we are, and they won't shift and don't want to change that. It might be expressions of anger. We are an angry family, and boy, do we ever let it out, and nobody gets us down. So we have to kind of challenge that because it's probably causing harm in the current generation, and it's causing harm to the parent generation and even generations before. The courage that we really need is the ability to sit alongside of our clients, witness their pain, and provide a path to transformation. We have to do this even when the pain is difficult to sit with and we may feel overwhelmed or uncomfortable. We have to do this when we kind of start to doubt that transformation is possible. We have to do this in a present and focused way while remaining connected in dark places. This is the challenge, and this is what can make this, other than the complexity, in the therapist side, this is what can make this very difficult. When we put this together, the connection and the courage, in the context of intergenerational therapy, we come to this concept of a master therapist, and this is a really important concept. So again, the word master is not being used as mastering over people. It's honing and having a very defined, specialized set of skills. Mastery as an intergenerational trauma therapist, it can take many years to develop unless you have an efficient and flexible framework and it's an intentional process that's engaged. Working by trial and error with intergenerational trauma can cause a lot of frustration. It can cause harm to clients because we're really not providing them with those specialized skills and interventions that they need. Without the specialty of treating intergenerational trauma, the therapist may not understand the deep roots or the clinical presentation and may actually end up unintentionally generating a greater degree of hopelessness or shame or feelings of failure. The therapy failures get racked up. The children, teens, and caregivers get more and more frustrated. They don't think therapy works, so they just kind of give up. This is where we have to have that specialty in order to provide our clients with the foundational skills for them to feel pieces of success and forward momentum. There's three important aspects to balance as a master therapist. We have to balance our specialized knowledge and framework for intervention when we're treating intergenerational traumas. We have to have that specialized knowledge, we have to have that framework, but we also have to be very connected and not allow that framework to interfere with the connection of the client. We always have to keep that connection and relationship front and center. A lot of attention to the generational impacts that might be present. Finally, we have to have the courage to walk alongside clients in really dark places. And these are dark places that generations may be defended against. Doesn't mean that we have to like rip a band-aid off and expose these deep, dark places. We have to be there alongside and be present with them. An interesting side note on becoming a connected, courageous master therapist, these skills are not related to the number of years or positions that a person has held or that a therapist has done in their work. Newer therapists that are just starting out can learn a framework that provides them with the ability to connect and have courage, and they can really support these families as well through co-regulation and just knowing the impacts and having that framework to work from. The solution to develop those necessary skills to work effectively and efficiently with intergenerational trauma is a specialized framework for assessing and treating the impacts. So, when we assess intergenerational trauma impacts, we need to cover 5 domains. First, we need to look at how does intergenerational trauma in this particular family impact the therapy process itself so that we can get that connection and that safe space right off the bat with a family. We have to identify problems with co-regulation in the relationship with the caregiver or parent, and also between the parent and child or teen. You have to look at the negative mentalization of the child. So what are the kind of the thought schemas that the parent has about the child's behavior? And the key to looking at this is hearing the client or the caregiver say, he's trying to drive me nuts, or she's doing this for attention, because that's how they're perceiving and how they're understanding their child's behavior, which is likely not accurate. And that we need to understand that in order to build that relationship between parent and child. We have to look at parenting strategies that backfire, because there's a heck of a lot of them, and we have to give them the skills and the tools that they didn't get as children. So when they grow up in the context of intergenerational trauma, their parents didn't have the skills either. So there's no way they could have transferred them down to the current generation that's in the parent role. So it's not, this is a no blame zone for parents. This is not because they don't want to be a good parent or they're not motivated. It's a skill issue. We also need to look at the child's negative self beliefs, because around age 5 to 7 is a prime time where children will develop negative beliefs about themselves, their relationships with other people, about the world. And then those go underground, they become implicit or unconscious, but they drive behavior and they cause different interpretations of life events and circumstances. So that's your assessment piece. The framework for healing is really three complicated steps, but it's 3 steps. First, we want to calm the family nervous system. So we want the heat or the defensiveness or even the high degree of shutdown. We want that kind of calm down in the family. And so calm may not be perfectly regulated. It may not be that they can stay in kind of a state of safety and connection all the time. It's just pulling the heat and the intensity out of the family, or opening the family up if it's a more shut down family. The second step is addressing the caregiver's unresolved trauma. When we only treat the child or the teen in these situations, we're putting all the pressure of healing multiple generations back on a child. And that is just not fair. and it's not going to be successful, and the parent isn't going to get the healing that they need. These parents really deserve healing and they deserve to be free from those impacts. The third area is healing the child's impacts or the teen's impacts and trauma, and in that process, building family resilience. The assessment process and intervention framework I've developed came over 15 years of experience working with complicated families. And I love it because it's such an honor to watch parents engage in play therapy, and you can see them have a light bulb moment when the child will express some kind of theme in therapy. And then the parent knows exactly how to address this in a way that they stay connected, they stay regulated, and they see and hear the child. So that is a pivotal moment for some of these families. I've also seen so many families that were difficult to treat cases. They're capable of huge transformation by using this framework. So, if you're interested in becoming connected and courageous master therapist, there's a solution that has 15 years of work kind of distilled into a framework that is easy to implement and it has everything that you need. There is an intervention that I'm doing or an immersion with therapists that is a 12-month program for 2024. It is a calendar that has monthly themes, weekly sub themes, and then daily prompts for becoming having the developed the foundation of being a connected and courageous master therapist with the specialty of treating intergenerational trauma. If you're interested, you can go to calendar.barbarawoodsphd.com. So keep tuning in, hit that like button, follow, share, subscribe to the feed, and we will start this journey to elevate your practice. So next week, we're going to be looking at not waiting to develop a specialty in today's world because there's so much need for specialized services. So thank you for joining. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next week.